I went to Southside High School, and all of us had to take speech class as part of the regular curriculum. And so part of the speech class was to begin with an introductory talk. And so I began to tell a little bit of my story, that I was a preemie. I was 1 pound, 14 ounces when I was born, and that was very tiny. They didn't know if I was going to survive, and I was placed for adoption and adopted by my parents, and I had a little bit of a rough start in life. I had a lot of respiratory infections and things like that, and so I shared a little bit of that experience and how fortunate I felt to be in the family that adopted me. And after I told my story, another boy got up the next day, and he told his story, and he said, because she told her story, I feel like I can tell my story. But when I was in middle school, I was on the track team, and one day during practice, I suffered a cardiac arrest. And he had never felt comfortable telling that story. And that's when I realized the importance and the power of telling one's story and what a difference it can make in connecting with people. Back then, I didn't realize that it was a call to the ministry exactly, but I thought, I think I know part of what I want to do with life. And so I went to nursing school, hung in there for a year and a summer session. And it was kind of funny because my roommate at the time at school was having a difficult time with it too. And we would get together and cry before doing things like giving injections. We didn't like to do things that hurt people or were embarrassing to people. But the interesting thing was that part of what we did in nursing school was they would give us a patient assignment, and the night before we would go over to the hospital and we would sit down with the patient and sometimes their family and hear their story. We facilitate sometimes their connection with their creator, and that's just as important, and that's the part that I felt in tune to. So I quit nursing school, and it was a good move for me. During my college experience, we had one particular intern. Her name was Lisa, and she came from a school way out in California, and she did the young adults group, among other things, as an intern at our church. So I began to think about it more seriously, going to seminary. And another person that really, really deeply impacted me at the time was Carol Green. She's a retired chaplain from Parkview. At that time, she was still going through seminary, and she was middle-aged, I would say probably mid-40s at the time. And I thought, okay, I'm seeing one woman that's close to my age, and I'm seeing another woman that's middle-aged, has a family. And so seeing those women in ministry and knowing that I could be like them in a way, led me to go to seminary in California. And I think that God kind of nudged me in the right places, because I moved from parish ministry to starting at Catholic Charities as a case manager. And shortly after that, my dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Carol Green was a staff chaplain at Parkview over at Randalia, and she gave me a call one day and said, would you consider chaplaincy? She ended up on October 31st offering me the position, and I began in December. So it was a little bit less than a year since my dad had died that I became a chaplain at Parkview. I go back to that call that I had in the beginning, that sense of connectedness, the sense of spirituality through people telling their stories. And people have a fear before they go in for things like surgery, or at least a concern before they do something like surgery. And we're there to remind them of God's presence. The healing isn't necessarily just physically, it's also what's going on emotionally and spiritually with them. How do they make sense out of this crisis, as it were, in their life? It's wonderful, the range of care that our patients and our families have. And in a way, that's what keeps me grounded, in addition to my faith, is being part of that team that does make the world just a little bit of a better place.